Well, hi everybody. My name's Ricky Banda. Um, I am a incident response manager at ARM Semiconductors, and I am about to start a new job at Google in about 3 weeks. Um, so that's fun and interesting. I've been working in security operations now for about 13 years, and I've been specialized in incident response, digital forensics, and incident response for about 5 or 6 years now. Um, I'm from San Antonio, Texas. I was born in South San Antonio, um, you know, uh, the hood. uh, I've kind of always been into technology and computers and whatnot, and I got started really, really young. Um, I definitely had a very different type of introduction to the industry compared to most folks. Um, when I got started, I had essentially gotten started because I grew up not without money. My parents weren't even around, nothing like that. Very traditional sort of if you're familiar with it, like a very traditional Mexican family can be very conservative in San Antonio. And so, doing anything with technology wasn't exactly um, pushed, or understood. But I did have some support from my grandmother and my uncle. Um, so yeah, as I was growing up, we didn't really have any money. We didn't have much of anything. Um, and well, when I was in high school, I started this computer maintenance program. I started in this computer maintenance program, and I'll never forget the instructor told all of us, you know, you can graduate, from high school with your A plus or network plus and make like 30, $40,000 a year. And to me at the time, that was like, holy shit, like that's a lot of money. I was very naive, but I mean, to me, that was. So I did that. I did end up graduating high school with an A plus, network plus, security plus, CCNA, and CEH. Um, and I was one of the first competitors to go to nationals for the Cyber Patriot competition, if any of you are familiar with that. Um, as a result of those competitions and whatnot, um, and being in San Antonio or Lackland Air Force bases, we were noticed by the 24th Air Force, which at the time was sort of the cyber command for the Air Force, and they noticed me and my team and essentially hooked us up with internships and threw us into a SOC, like when we were like 16, 17. So I've been working in security operations since before I was 18. I was very lucky to have that sort of opportunity. Um, and I ran with it. I mean, I kept on going and going and going, and as I kind of go on with the presentation, we'll kind of go further down that what that timeline looks like. But overall, I go to DEF CON every year. I like to go to meet up with friends. I'll be honest with y'all. Nowadays, I go to DEF CON and Black Hat mostly just to see my friends. All sorts of other security practitioners from all over the world. Um, I'm not as much into the talks unless there's something very, very interesting or I'm giving a talk myself. Um, it's for me, it's been a very good networking opportunity and, getting out there, exploring career opportunities and things like that, which, by the way, I highly recommend. If you get an opportunity or find an opportunity to go to DEF CON, you absolutely should. There's no better way, in my opinion, to meet other security practitioners, land jobs, learn things. I mean, it's just a week full of nothing but security people nerding out and partying. Let's be real. I wasn't a very functional human being that week, and that's a lot of people can attest to that. Um, Currently, I do have over 20 certs. I'm a SANS MSISE grad student, so with the SANS Institute, I'm getting my master's in information security engineering, um, which means every 90 days or so, I'm taking a SANSX course. And then my previous companies, I worked at Amazon. I was the incident commander for CDO, which is Basically, the best way I could describe that is everything that's not an AWS or an AWS subsidiary is in CDO. I was an incident commander there. I was a SOC analyst at Rackspace, and then of course with the United States Air Force. Um, yeah. So what I really want this talk to kind of be over is how I landed in the role that I'm in and what that journey kind of looked like for me. Of course, that's not going to be, the same as everybody, but it can, I think, in my mind, help give you some sorts of ideas if you even want to do incident response and what it took for me to kind of get to the role that I'm in. Incident response is, well, DFIR, DFIR, is a myriad of different roles. And I would definitely say, and, happy to debate this, nothing within DFIR is entry level. Most folks who are in this area tend to be tenured, tend to have worked in various areas of security, um, prior law enforcement, military, government, or, got started in a SOC. So, my sort of timeline for how I got to where I am is, as I mentioned before, um, I got started with my DoD internship around 2010, 2011. Moved on to government contracting for a while. I worked at companies like Northrop Grumman and Raytheon and subcontractors doing SOC work and contract proposals and like some light security engineering, computer science work. And then for a while, and keep in mind, I was young and I was really tired of being around security people. I know it's going to sound a little weird, but I was young and like this had been my life and I was kind of over it. So for a couple years in between there, after getting done with some of the government contracting work that I had done, I started exploring sysadmin work, which I'm really glad I did. Um, I manage all sorts of environments, Windows, Linux, Unix, databases, SANs, routing, switching, etc. Um, and I think that really did help me a lot in understanding, the context that's needed in security operations whenever you're trying to, do work. Um, After that, I missed doing the work and I wanted to focus more on cyber investigations and, doing what I felt like I was good at. Um, and so that's when I ended up at Rackspace. And you'll notice here, I put in that I had dropped out of college, went back to college, started, got my bachelor's degree, then got my master's degree. I started in my career and I didn't get my bachelor's degree until I had like 6 or 7 years of experience already in the field. It's not something that I feel like when I first started, I was very anti, you know, formal education. But as I started getting older and started realizing that there were gaps in my knowledge and that there were things I needed to work on, um, I started to sort of appreciate going to college more for me, not for a particular career or job, but more for me to, um, I guess, understand the world a little bit better. That's the best way I can put it. And I found that I really love learning. One thing to kind of keep in note here is every year that is noted on this timeline that I put together, I made it my personal goal, or I told myself when I was younger, if I'm not going to go to college, then I'm going to get at least one certification a year. And that's partially the reason why I have like over 20 certs, is because while I didn't want to go to formal education when I was younger, I kind of sub that instead. Well, I want to get something that certifies or accreditates my knowledge. And so I was very certificate focused. So yeah, I mean, I've got Cisco certs, CompTIA certs, JIAC certs. I think I have a CrowdStrike cert in there, an Amazon cert, and whatever I could get. That was sort of my essential goal. Um, well, after doing my analysis work, I learned how to do triage work, hunting, threat intelligence. I had an opportunity to work with all sorts of career security individuals, mostly from, prior military, while I was working at the MSSP. Which, by the way, if you're not familiar, an MSSP is a managed security services provider, which is essentially companies that handle tier 1 to tier 3 and even incident response for clients that don't want to worry about it or focus on it. I tell a lot of people who are interested in doing DFIR that one of the best ways to probably get in is through a SOC, and even better is through an MSSP. And again, this is just my personal opinion. The reason being is that the company has more incentive to pay for your trainings, your education, expose you to different environments because you make them money. You as a security analyst are the one who is generating, revenue for that organization. There's more incentive there. And I'm not going to lie to any of you. MSSP work is really shitty. It's not fun. It can be, like, you can do some really cool stuff, but like these places they can be, um, you know, lots of turnover and lots of work that comes in just because these companies are focused on onboarding clients rather than maybe implementing or improving services. And this is just a thing that happens across the industry. But, you know, I stuck with it for 3 years and it paid off. I did learn a lot and I'm very appreciative of that. And of course, I was still making good money. Like at this point in my career, I was making just under 6 figures, which was definitely more than good enough for a 20-year-old. And I'm going to be very honest about some of these figures that I'm working with over my career so you all can have an understanding and an idea as to what you can strive and achieve and hope for, over 10 to 15 years within your careers if you're just starting. So after doing the MSSP work, I was bored, I was tired, I was burnt out. And I landed a role in Austin. That's when I moved from San Antonio to Austin. And I had enough experience at this point. I think I had 7 or 8 years and, certifications, a degree, and I landed a principal security engineering role at a company here in Austin, a tech company. And, originally I was hired to help, stand up and architect like threat detections and SIM architecture and, kind of building all of the essential tools that would be needed, for the security operations team. Well, I didn't really want to do security operations at that point because I had already been doing it, all of my life, and I wanted to try something else. But what I had found was that I sort of ended up pivoting from being a sort of defensive or infrastructure security engineer to, I guess, being an operations engineer because I had the experience and I had the tenure and I was good at it. I couldn't stop myself from going through the tools we would deploy and, looking for threats, putting together threat detections or even implementing threat intelligence and then going through that data. And so our CISO at that company was like, hey, you know, I preferred if you were on our operations team because we need someone tenured there. And at the time, I was like, I really don't want to do this. I was tired of it. But then it kind of dawned on me as I kept doing the work that I was good at it. I was really good at security operations work. Not necessarily the analysis, but the sort of out of the box thinking and bringing people together and getting resources and taking charge and leading incidents and, helping people like through crisis. And that's when I really started to understand like, hey, you know, I'm I'm good at this. And like there was no title. You can't go to school. You can't how can I say? You can't like just jump into a role as an incident manager, an incident commander, and that's what I was becoming. And I sort of got there because as security escalations happened, and even as I started handling my first breach, I was the person who was stepping up to coordinate all of the assets, all of our resources, collaborate between legal, communications, executive communications, planning, investigative objectives, and doing some of the analysis myself and leading the investigation. I wasn't just sitting there, analyzing data anymore. I was directing and, managing like how the incident should be taken care of. And I didn't know what to call that. Well, again, like I said, I started. It was around this point that I started my master's with SANS, and I handled like my very first major breach. And I'll tell you, it's something interesting to see your work like on CNN and like people speculate on it and stuff like that. It's wild. Um, but in that event, I led the team. I led a team of over like 200 people to hunt down a threat within a vast network, lock it down, put in preventative controls, and the realities of this situation, I'll let you all know right now, is that, I'm working 12 to 14 hours a day. And in a lot of cases, as you begin to get more tenured in incident response work, you'll find that there's fewer and fewer resources in terms of people. Um, at least that's been my experience. It seems like there aren't a lot of tenured IR folks or people who want to stay in IR, which is fair. Um, so yeah, so I realized at this point I wanted something more. I felt like I needed more for the amount of stress and like what I was doing that, other folks weren't doing. And so sure enough, Amazon had um, this job offer. I'm sorry, this rec out for an incident commander. And I looked at the roles and then I started really kind of diving deeper into, what that means and what that is. And then it started dawning on me, oh my God, like this is what I do. And I wasn't familiar at this point, this is like 2019. I wasn't familiar at this point with, the incident command system. I wasn't familiar with any of that. So it's like, wow, this is somebody who is essentially the shot caller in the event of an emergency. This is what I'm good at. This is what I do. And it felt really good at that point. And this is why I'm saying it's like, you can't really go to school for this, at least not yet. And maybe one of my goals is to change that and see if we can get something together like within our industry that is more for leading incidents within cybersecurity and you know, not just based off the traditional ICS system. So I guess before I continue on with like what that actually means to be an incident commander, I wanted to kind of go over what skills I had to develop over the last, 10, 12 years now, as well as the sort of pros and cons to doing DFIR work. So I wanted to be very transparent with all of you. The benefits in compensation in my mind are excellent. I went from over a 10-year period of making 40,000 to making 10 times that. And I mean that. Um, it is a lot of work. The money is very nice. But on the flip side of that, there's just this sort of acceptance that you know what you're signing up for, right? If you're working as an incident responder within a company, you are the person that company relies on if shit goes down. Like there is no one else. Well, I mean, there probably are. You might have retainers and whatnot, but you are the person, that if some emergency happened, this company is under fire, they're on the news, like there's a major thing happening, that's you. It doesn't matter where you're at or what you're doing. You don't have the sort of the a lot of the leniency that a lot of other traditional tech roles have, for better or worse. And that'll change, I think, in time as we get more people, in the industry. For larger organizations, well, let me take that back. You might be thinking, well, even at larger organizations like Amazon or Google or the Facebooks or Apples and whatnot, surely they have plenty of IR people. You'd be surprised to find out that is not the case. Even with major corporations that have unlimited money, they would still may have small dedicated incident response team. I'm not talking about a SOC. I'm talking about dedicated tenured IR people. And I mean, it's stressful, but I mean, I love it. the thing is to find a job or a company or an organization, I should say, that will respect your time, provide you the time off, and hopefully give you an average workload that is limited. Um, my sort of personal philosophy is that dedicated IR folks should have at least 40% of their time open to chill. It's kind of like being a firefighter. Like, if they fight fires all day, every day, they're not going to be good at it. They're going to be tired. They're going to be done. And then you have critical assets, when an emergency happens.
Yeah,
Now,
I've
being in this
seen
work,
I've seen some job postings for incident response where you get like 12 hours shifts, but it's only 4 days on and 4 days off to create that balance.
yeah, I mean, it just depends. Like at one of the companies I worked for, we worked 3 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 3 days off. Um, but what I'm trying to impart here is even with a structured schedule, it doesn't matter. If you're a tenured or you're the senior incident response consultant or you're a principal IR person, like with the organization, and some real shit's going down, you're getting engaged whether you like it or not. Like, that's just the reality. And you have to be okay with that. Like, um, it is how it is. Um, it's about you as an individual understanding what your limits are and then working within those constraints. I like to think that, as much as we preach about, burnout and taking care of yourself and whatnot across the entire industry, I completely agree 100%. It's just that in an incident response, well, you know, it's really on your leadership to understand that in order to take care of your IR people, you need to have backups, you need to have support, you need to have a well-structured organization to support those people. And you're not always going to get that. So it's something that you have to kind of find within yourself to accept, like, hey, you know what? Yeah, this is what I want to do. But, and this is where I'm putting in like the realities and the caveats and being very real with all of you. Because as much as it is stressful and as much as the money's really good, um, you know, there is that part of um, how can I say, like, you get to see your work in action. You are actively protecting people, privacy, their data, organizations. I mean, I've done IR work in doing everything from, protecting a company from getting ransom to assisting law enforcement in an active shooter environment. Um, there's no sort of limit to the work that we end up getting engaged to do. If it's digital in any aspect, well, hey, you're the trained incident responder, you're the trained emergency responder. This is what you do. Um, and it's fun. Like, for me, like, I don't know. For me, it's really exciting. It's really fun. And just like you said, Angel, it excites you. Yeah, it excites me. And that is not the same excitement a lot of people get, and that's totally okay. But if you still like are looking at all of this and you're like, hell yeah, like that looks fun, like that looks like what I want to do, then you're my people and I want to help you get in. But I also want to be very honest with a lot of people when they come to me and they ask me for help in getting into the field. I don't want to mislead them and say, oh yeah, IR is for everyone, because I don't think that's true compared to a lot of other career fields. And keep in mind, I do separate IR from SOC work. And I can get into a little bit more of that later. SOC folk may, support incident response work, um, but it just depends. Some of the other things I wanted to highlight here is understanding that if this really is something you want to do, even after me, putting all these warnings and barriers up, it can affect your personal life, right? I mean, you need to have a partner in your life who can accept that, hey, this is what you want to do, that you could get paid at 2 a.m. and get on a plane. I've done it. That you could be working 12 to 14 hours. You need to have a very supportive home life. Otherwise, you're going to get drained down. You have to accept and understand where you're coming from and what you want to do. You have to accept that your work is highly, highly visible. And I mean this in a positive and a negative way. In a positive way, because let's take me at 10, 11 years. Most of my work is directly reviewed by senior executives. I directly write reports for CEOs, for CISOs, for CFOs, um, principal engineers, laureate engineers, VP engineers, all of the important people at a company. Even when I was working at Amazon, this was I shouldn't, sorry. This was terrifying, knowing that my work, my incident reports were going to some of the top people at Amazon and I had to be on my game. So one, that creates career opportunity. In and of itself, within this career field, you are just naturally highly visible, and it's amazing for career opportunity and money and growth. On the flip side of that, you mess up. You don't use language correctly. You mislead. You don't put in all the data. You'll get torn apart. You make the wrong decision, the wrong call. All of a sudden, you're seeing people on Twitter talk about it. You're seeing it on the news. It negatively impacts people. It's definitely, and I'll tell you, to all of you, honestly, thankfully, I haven't had a situation where I feel like I've messed up that bad. But you have to be okay messing up. You have to be okay, like, okay, I screwed up. How am I gonna resolve this? How am I gonna find the answer? How am I gonna, rectify whatever it is, whatever decision I made, that landed me in this situation. It's about failing fast, picking yourself back up, and then taking care of the mission and the operation, especially as you go into more incident management work. And I think one of the last things I wanted to highlight here is something, to be very honest with all of you. There's the very real reality that IR folk tend to have to work with sensitive content. That means you're going to potentially investigate your coworkers, your colleagues. You may have to deal with material that's uh, trauma inducing, if you know what I mean. You may have to work with law enforcement a bit. Again, you are the person or the people who an organization relies on in the event of a real emergency or something critical or disgusting or damaging. And as fun as it is to do that, it can be a bit much. And again, if you think you're good with that, again, you're my people. And I would love to help you get in. So now that we got this out of the way, what are the sort of skills that I developed, I guess, over the last 10 years or so, uh, um, getting into this career field? And it looks like one of my slides got mixed up. um, sorry, I'm just looking at the chat real quick. Thanks, Angel. Yeah, this is how I am in general. Like, I I don't care anymore. Like, with the work that I do and the stuff that I have to kind of deal with on a day-to-day basis, you get very into a mood where things and stress and things just kind of like float off of you. Um, you don't get as affected by little things, I guess I should say. You learn how to really deal with stress management. Um, but from a technical perspective, over my career, when you work in DFIR, you do not get the luxury of saying, "Oh yeah, I only work on Windows. I only work with malware. I only work in Python or Rust. I only work with Linux, Unix." Like, I don't care if there's an incident and it's on a hypervisor or it's on a switch or it's on an employee's cell phone. You got to respond to it. Figure it out. And that is probably my favorite part of working in IR. I get to touch all sorts of technologies on a day-to-day basis. And I don't know them. I do not know everything. I am not a technical genius, I never claimed to be. Um, but I know enough across various areas of technology that regardless of the incident and regardless of the technology that is impacted, I feel confident enough in my skills and what I can do that I can find the answer and I can resolve and respond or investigate that threat. Or I can direct my teams to investigate and contain that threat. So for me specifically in the career that or the work that I do, incident command, it is a mix of technical and non-technical skills. Now, don't take this little chart that I put up, as the rule, so to say. The incident command system varies from organization to organization, emergency response team to emergency response team. It doesn't matter. The idea is to give you an idea as to what that means. So me as an incident commander, I very regularly will have a sort of assigned IR person in legal, an assigned IR person in comms, an assigned IR person in HR, in finance. If I need to buy something, to investigate something, I'm doing it. And I have the right people around me to consult, make those decisions. So as I'm guiding or I'm setting the investigative objectives for the incident, as my teams are reporting data to me, I have to be able to interpret that data, maybe feed that to legal, get a legal consultation. Okay, here's our options. How should we review this from a, I don't know, from a regulatory perspective? What's our due diligence here? And then I can react to the incident accordingly based off the people that I have I'm working with. And so what that means is being strong enough technically and non-technically to be able to juggle all of these things and to balance all of them. And again, you're under duress. Like you could be under active attack while you're having to make all of these decisions and run on the fly. Um, so specifically with what I do, and as I mentioned earlier, when I started to realize, hey, this is what I'm good at, um, it's this. It was, sort of tactical strategic thinking, building plans on the fly, analyzing a threat and identifying a way to contain that threat as quick as possible or removing the threat, um, identifying resources to get there, and if need be, and if I need to, um, I'll get a hands-on keyboard and do the analysis myself. At the end of the day, as an incident manager or commander or whatever, you are responsible for that incident. That is your baby. That is your ugly baby. And however it gets handled is how you handle it. And for me, that's very people dependent. I make sure that when I'm in a company, I have all the right, folks on my side. I have to play politics a lot, just part of the game. I, do work for others, help others, support others, and then whenever I need to play those cards, people trust me, they rely on me, and they know that I mean well and that I'm trying to support them. Um, so kind of going back into the skills. Uh, Obviously, this isn't everything. Um, but as I noted here, be strong enough with Windows, Linux, Unix, have an understanding of how the operating systems function, how they work, and I understand that potentially for a lot of you, that's not easy. Even those first like 3 bullets that I have on there, I am asking you to learn a lot of very different disciplines of technology. That is not easy in any way, shape, or form, and it's not supposed to be. That's why when folks who like do specific 100% like digital forensics work, like they may focus on specific areas, but they still have to have enough knowledge and contextual understanding of other technology areas to understand how like malware may impact a system or multiple systems or multiple devices or connected environments. I've had to respond to incidents where an adversary took over hypervisor and started spinning up their own VMs within our own infrastructure and, use those to pivot and connect into routers and switches and embedded systems even. And these are all different skills, and you're not going to be good at all of them. Like, there's no expectation there. I feel very confident in all of my skill sets that I'm listing here, except for programming. And I'm being very honest with you because I hate programming. I hate development work. But I can still analyze code. I can still read code. I can still write scripts if I really need to. But that is not the focus of what I do. I like to think that the focus of my skills and my abilities are investigation, I can't say the word, being an investigator. And these are just the tools that help me, build the case. But specifically for DFIR, definitely, understand the fundamentals, the basics of various technology areas. Again, you don't have to be some genius in some area or another, but I would suggest identify a piece of security or technology that really, really interests you and be really good at that. So like for me, it's network forensics. I love doing network analysis. Do I get to do it as much as I used to? No. But I love analyzing traffic. I always have. And for a buddy of mine, it's kind of like give and take with different skills. So like a buddy of mine, he hates incident command work. He cannot stand it. He doesn't want to be in charge. But this man can write automation that will go through and scan or like execute thousands of different malware payloads against dozens of different EDR tools, print out the reports, and that's still part of DFIR. It's just we have very different skill sets. I couldn't do what he does, at least not as good as he could, and vice versa. So even within DFIR, it's still good to index on a piece of security analysis that you're interested in and get really good at that, but still have enough broader knowledge that you're not thrown for a loop. If I were to tell you, oh, hey, go and query that database and pull back those logs for XYZ data. Whereas, another person, they get a request like that and they may have like scripts and things ready to go that they just click a button and all that data is returned. There's a lot of different areas and a lot of different focuses and knowledge to be gained. That's also why I think incident response work is some of the most interesting in our field, and why I personally don't really index heavily on any one technology or get really excited about any one thing or another. To me, they're just tools. Like if I approach an engagement, do you have endpoint protection? Do you have network, network captures? Do you have, I don't know, CASB, or your logs? It's things like that. Like I don't care whether you're using CrowdStrike or Defender. All I care about is do I have the tools to build my case? Um, so with that being said, the other portion to this is also the business skills. And this I would say is more specifically with incident management or incident command. Because on top of having to have the technical skills and the technical understanding, you also need to be able to communicate with executives. And executive writing is not the same as any documentation you write on a day-to-day basis. You have to be good at, well, writing documentation. And that is a completely different skill set too. Technical writing. You have to understand the business you're in. You have to understand what keeps the business running, what keeps the lights on, how you get financing, how you get funding, and how if you make a call in the middle of an incident to take down a system, is that system going to cause this company to lose millions of dollars in a day? You have to be able to conceptualize all of the things that a lot of other jobs do within a security framework, so to say, or sort of like a security shell, if you will. You have to be good at managing stress. So being an incident manager, commander, whatever, is like being a conductor. If you look stressed, you speak stressed, you come off hostile, you look defeated, you speak defeated, that impacts the rest of the response. Everyone, from managers to lawyers to engineers to analysts to service teams, like they take off of your queue. And you have to be able to balance the need for being firm and influence and influencing with logically sound asks. If I have to be firm or get ugly during the middle of an engagement, to me personally, I feel like I failed somewhere. Whether that had been in the preparation to the incident and building, contacts and, meeting people, or something that I could have done to prevent that situation, or something like that, because I should be able to manage an incident and sort of relatively keep the stress management to an adequate level without raising temperaments. Again, and it's also kind of like being a coach. You have to be able to look at your team, like especially your investigative team, and identify and notice when people are tired and they need to get pulled back and you need different resourcing. You have to be very, I don't know, like I said, empathetic on top of, maintaining all of these additional skills under duress in the middle of an incident while things are on fire and people are talking on Twitter about things I don't understand. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I've definitely been in a situation where I see people talking on the internet about something that I'm working, and that you probably see me tweet stuff like this before, and then I get like upset about it. um, of course, there's leadership, right? And just like I said before, taking people take your cue. I mean, being an incident manager or just being an incident responder in general, you have to be a leader because even if you aren't the one leading the incident, as an incident responder, you're still interfacing with other people, like throughout this thing, and they're still going to be looking to you for guidance and advice. Project management skills. The way that I like to see IR is it's like rapid response project management, and you're on very, very tight deadlines. um, and then, of course, this is a little weird for me because I'm definitely not the best at it, and I've only really started to understand the impacts of the law and, regulation and whatnot by speaking to lawyers. But you do have to be able to understand and know how to, maintain a chain of custody, documentation, collecting your artifacts, building things in a forensically sound manner, but not in such a way that it, you know, impacts the incident. One of the biggest things that drives me up the wall is when old school, older defer folks were trained and taught, things have to be in a very forensically sound manner, so they image everything. They take images no matter what. Well, that's not realistic nowadays when systems have like 2, 3, 400 gigs of RAM, if not terabytes, and forensically sound is great if you're going to court, which doesn't happen very often. So it's just one of those things that you just kind of learn over time and kind of deal with and work with. Um, and probably, in my opinion, the biggest thing to learn when wanting to get into IR is risk acceptance. You have to be able to look at the data, within an incident, look at the information provided, from your support staff. You have to be able to make sound decisions while consulting with business leaders and accepting that if we make this decision, we're at risk of this. So, for example, I don't know, I need to contain a system. That system, well, the risk is that if we haven't investigated everything throughout the environment, the adversary could get tipped off, and we'll see an escalation of attack, or some other type of escalation. However, here's all the things that we have done to mitigate that risk. Here is the risk. You know, are we fine with this decision? If so, be prepared in the event that XYZ blows up. Um, and it's not easy to do that because you have to understand the business, you have to understand the context, you have to understand the adversary mindset, you have to understand the limitations of your team and your resourcing and tools you have. Um, yeah. So there's a lot of different stuff that goes into being an incident manager. And then, of course, like within Defer, right? I mean, there's folks who all they focus on is reverse engineering or malware analysis or threat intel or digital forensics, disk analysis, memory forensics. And that's perfectly okay. There's all sorts of different roles within Defer. We're all incident responders. We just have different roles to play in different areas that we're specialized in. Some folks specialize in strategy and leading the incident. That's sort of my thing. And then some people are just really, really damn good at memory analysis and building cases and collecting artifacts. And we all support each other and build off of each other. It's a very interesting field because it's like we're a subfield within InfoSec. And within that subfield, there really aren't a lot of us at all. And um, that's why, like, maybe you'll see sort of the same names show up over and over again, just because, like I said, just across the industry, there really aren't too many of us. One thing I did want to speak on or highlight to all of you, and I kind of spoke on it a little bit before earlier, is SOC analyst, I guess, versus defer, right? So depending on the maturity of the organization, typically with lower maturity organizations, they consider their IR folks their SOC folks, and that's not really how that should play out. IR folks are sort of a tier 4. Whenever an incident isn't going on, they're consultants for the company. They are living in the preparation phase of the incident response lifecycle. They're looking at your tools, they're looking at your technologies, they're looking at, they have the ability to contribute to different projects within your security organization, but once they're activated, they have to use what's available to them to respond to that incident. So, for example, I'm not fighting fires all day. So what am I doing? I'm looking over our threat detections. I'm tuning our tools. I'm looking over our EDR. I'm making sure that we have coverage on all of our tools. I'm making sure that EDR is deployed everywhere, that I have network captures. And if we don't, I work with the project teams on getting these things done. It's kind of like being a security architect, or yeah, like a security consultant, outside of an engagement. Um, and that's really where we also get to dive into engineering and analysis, and we can contribute to other projects within the security department. Um, we shouldn't, well, in my opinion, controversial opinion, IR folks should not necessarily be focused on any sort of ticket queues. Um, they can handle escalations, right? Um, but instead should be focused on project work, and then of course activated, once an incident happens. So, as I mentioned before, for SOC analysts, you get some of this. You will contribute to an incident. You might even lead an incident, just depending on the severity of that incident, the impact, um, you know, what systems are involved, things like that. But in a more mature organization, you may have a SOC and it's tier one, two, one, two, three, maybe something different. Then you might have a supporting function like threat intel or threat hunting or something like that. And you'll have your incident response folks who are focused on digital forensics and of course your incident commanders. And those will sort of be, like I mentioned, like your tier four, to handle any sort of escalation for that company. Kind of being the go-to folks, you know, for the company's executives and other security people within your company to be like, hey, I just saw this thing. Like, what should we do? And being a good incident responder is all about knowing like that you're not going to know everything and that you have a good list of contacts, to consult with and talk to whenever you come across a situation that you don't know how to handle. Because really, you're not there to be an expert at everything. You're there to be an expert at containing a situation. That actually might be a really cool job title, containment expert. um, you're an expert at dealing with emergencies. Um, and that's a very different skill. It's reliant on technical and business skills, but again, it's just kind of depends. um, which is interesting. And now I'm looking at the chat, and I do see a question from Ralph. How much is making conclusions on limited data and business skill? Oh yeah, absolutely. So whenever I was at that very large company I mentioned earlier, um, there were many times where I had to respond to something and, you know, not every lead could be followed, not every thread could be pulled because the reality of the situation was that it was business impacting and only so many resources could be leveraged. So working in IR is definitely the definition of don't let, perfect be the ah, I lost it. Sorry. My head's like all over the place right now. But basically what I mean is it's okay. Um, where if you're not going to have all the answers, you're not going to get all the answers, and you don't always have all the time and resources to make that happen. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just about making sure that you get to containment and that the threat is not going to continue to spread and spread and spread. Um, kind of hope that answers the question. Did anybody else have any other questions for anything? Feel free to ask me anything, whether it be about the technical work, what I do, money, education. Happy to talk about anything.
So I'll go ahead and take the lead and ask you if you are planning to release a course on the skills that you say are lacking on the teaching side, like leading these incidents.
So I might do something for my master's thesis, but honestly, between work and grad school, I've wanted to do something like that. Um, and it's just time consuming and exhausting. But I do have to write a thesis for SANS, and I think my topic is going to be something along those lines.
Yeah, you may be able to take advantage of that thesis to make the course.
Yeah, yeah, and that could lead into that. Um, I don't know. Like I said, it's just a time consuming thing, really. um, let's see. What do you recommend for someone to do if they're interested in IR? I hate answering or giving you this answer, but one of the best incident response courses I ever took personally was GCIH or SANS 504, which I know is not realistic for a lot of people. Um, uh, but like I said, SANS does have a bachelor's program, a master's program. They have teaching assistants or things like that. I do believe John Strand has really good courses that are like really inexpensive, and John Strand is OG. Like that man is like one of the few that I look up to. I've heard they're good. Okay, cool. Yeah, I would honestly maybe recommend if you want like good IR training and you obviously don't have Sans money, go and find like the Twitter profiles for people like John Strand, Robert Lee, um, I don't know, Mauer Jake, um, Leslie, uh, and see, just kind of go through their profiles and stuff to see if they have any courses or things they contribute to. You might be surprised. There's a lot of free knowledge out there. Um, in terms of like technical like IR stuff, I'm actually gonna share one link with y'all just because like there's one guy that I've just been pushing his website to everyone whenever I can, and I'll show you why. This is my buddy Jai. He's a really good guy. If you ever get a chance to talk to him, tell him I said hi. He has this reference sheet, and I just posted it in the chat, which is basically, in my opinion, a reference sheet for everything you may have to do during an incident response scenario. And it's excellent. And I've told him this many times that like I've used his reference guide. It's not even really a guide, it's just more of a resource sheet. Many, many times over the years, like during an engagement. But if you look at his references, those are all of the links and things that we do during digital forensics to respond to something. And while it's not going to give you maybe a one like step guide on like how to do things, it will give you information on what the kind of work we do and more tactical information so you can go and kind of peruse it yourself more. Um, let's see. You mentioned you had to adapt to something in your skills and learning. How would you approach? So, Den, are you like a IT incident manager, like system outage incident manager?
Hey, it's Denise. It
Okay.
doesn't you can't tell it from there, but yeah, I'm currently an incident manager that deals with outages for an MSP.
Okay. Cool. 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 Yeah. 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 So, that is a very, very good question. So as if you're not aware, you can work in incident management, just not in security, right? I mean, like there's incident managers who handle service outages. There's incident managers. I mean, whenever the police respond to something serious, there's an incident manager there or incident commander. Um, so for you, I would say if you're already doing incident management, you probably already have all of the ugly. You know how to handle stress. You know how to deal with people, executives, leaders when critical systems go down. And really, that's probably the hardest thing to learn or hardest thing to do. I would much rather, I don't know, open a book up about, I don't know, Windows forensics than have to worry about messing up to a CEO of a company. um, so for you, I would say because you already have a lot of those skills down, just really focus heavily or focus harder on the technical security skills. Um, and then don't be afraid to apply to jobs because while the work in and of itself will be different, and maybe even the criticality of that work will be different. The basic sort of same steps and the framework and everything else that goes into incident, leadership, it's still there. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a service outage or an adversary's compromised your network. They're just different skills you need to learn to be able to respond to that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I was studying for my size, I definitely noticed some commonalities, and that might have like helped me when I was taking it. But
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And again, feel free to reach out. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's not, the technical skills are not, in my opinion, the hard thing to learn here for getting into DFIR at all. It's just the stress management and being exposed to high stress situations and working through that and dealing with it, things like that. Which, if you're already doing that, you're going to be set. Yeah. So, Angel, your question for red and blue stuff, purple stuff. Yeah, I mean, like, as I noted here on this slide, like, again, don't just look at this. Sorry. Let me see if it's not. Is it not showing up? There we go. Okay. Don't look at this as just like, oh, this is what I have to learn to do this work. Nah. Like, when I mentioned the GCIH, like, they very specifically go into fundamental basic attacks. The cool thing about working in incident response is, because we have to be prepared to respond to anything, there's no damage, there's no hurt to yourself or your career if you wanted to pick up like an OSCP, or you wanted to learn more about pen testing, or you wanted to learn more about building a data lake. Why? Because we feed logs to data lakes. I have to know how to build a SIM architecture, or set up Splunk if I want to collect logs so I can do an investigation. And I should probably know how an adversary is going to attack a system if I'm protecting that system. Like, in my opinion, there's nothing you can't learn technically within security that's going to hurt your abilities as an incident responder. They just make you more unique, more than anything. It's sort of like if I'm building my dream incident response team, I look at my people and I have to think of all the skills they have. And that really gives you the flexibility to learn whatever the hell it is you want to learn. Like, for me, that's being the network guy. I'm the network forensics guy, usually. Even though I'm doing incident management or whatever, outside of an incident, I'm usually looking at, the IPS, the IDS, I'm looking at the configs. Engineers who manage those types of devices will come to me and ask me for, consults and information. Does that mean that I know everything about, like, I don't know, taking a memory dump and analyzing a hypervisor, or a hypervisor's memory dump? No. Could I do it? Yeah. Is it going to take me a long time? Probably. Compared to, like, a buddy of mine who all he does is, like, dump memory and analyze memory all day. And it's like, being an IR, there are base fundamental skills like triage, analysis, EDR, NDR, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, all those same similar skills that we have to have. But that's why I heavily emphasized, find something you're good at and something you really like, because then whenever, like, you look at your roster of incident responders, whether you work at a consultation company or a small shop or something like Amazon or Google, you can come in and say, well, I do DFIR, here are my specialties. I think you mentioned something about strategy games earlier, and yes, I do. Like, my favorite game is XCOM. And just like a video game like that, you have individual units who have individual specific skill sets that make them specialized and, unique, but they all have basic skill sets. It's kind of the same thing in DFIR. Different people like different things. And that's probably one of the coolest parts to doing this work, in my opinion, is you can learn all you want to about, I don't know, red teaming and attacking and whatnot, and maybe be an adversary specialist within an incident response team. A lot of incident response folks may not have threat intel skills. Like, they're all contributing to the mission, if that makes sense. Because otherwise, if I'm in a situation where I need those skills, I'm gonna have to go to my like retainer, or I'm gonna have to go to, I don't know, I'm gonna have to find someone somewhere within my company to do that thing. Um, yeah, keep in mind that while DFIR is its own little area, like within the encompassing, you know, group that is blue team work, all of those skills translate and support and maintain each other. It's why I love doing this work. Um, because if I decided tomorrow I really, really wanted to index on threat detection, that's not going to hurt me in any way, shape, or form. Or if I decided tomorrow I really, really, really want to get good at like SOAR or security operations automation, that's not going to hurt my career at all either. Like these are all skills. And I also agree with that. Yep. Um, being the network guy is not fun when you don't have other like network security people to really talk to or bounce ideas off of. And whenever you have other stuff you want to do. Um, but it is good to have a specific skill or niche, something that you can sort of fall back to. Because if like my entire life like crumbled apart tomorrow and I don't know, I didn't want to do security work and I hated it. I don't know, that which will never happen. I could go be a network engineer. I know that. I know I can still be a sysadmin. But definitely would not give me the thrill or the love that I have for the work that I do now. And I know that I did speak a lot about like being careful if this is what you want to do, and these are the realities, and this is how stressful it is. But I say that because I love this work. I've been doing it, and I know how it is, and I know how it's affected people in real life, my friends, coworkers, and some people thrive in that environment, some people don't. So it's like I don't want to set anybody up here for failure and then say like, oh yeah, all of you should go into like this work and all of you should do this. Um, because it's not as evergreen as something like blue team work or red team work or anything like that, or even GRC in my opinion. Um, yep. Anything else?
I have a
If
question.
I got, oh,
Go ahead.
I already had one. You can go ahead. You can go first.
Um, you mentioned having support from leadership. That sounds really important. I'm curious how you think about when interviewing, looking for signs of like good support, good IR culture. I guess things like good uncle culture, balance of like
Oh yeah.
reactivity, proactivity. Any red flags to keep an eye for?
Yeah. Okay. So your customer most of the time in doing like this type of work is going to be the executive board and even potentially like the board of um, um, the company's board. It's going to be the execs. It's going to be CEOs. You might not interact with them. It just depends on the size of your company. Like the company I'm at now, I regularly talk to VPs. The important thing to know though is that these are just people. Like, yeah, they can probably screw up your life. Like, let's be real. But these people don't like being spoken to like they're special or they're different. I'll tell you that much. Um, Another hint that I can give you there, or another like tidbit, is be friends with executive assistants. The one thing you never ever want to do is piss off an EA. These people constantly talk to executives. They constantly schedule. They talk between each other. My God, they gossip. Like, and working in IR, you do tend to talk and work with these people very often. And whenever you have EAs on your side, you can get anything done. You can find a person, you can find contacts. A lot of executives rely on their EAs not just as people to take care of things for them, but they share everything with them. Um, so like whenever I was interviewing for Google, um, oh, internal audit, EA, executive assistant, like people who do the scheduling and like handle stuff for executives. Yeah. Um, Whenever I was interviewing for Google, I didn't find out until a couple of weeks after that the final person that I had interviewed with was the CISO for G Cloud. And The reason being that he directly interviewed me is, well, I think I'm going to be working for him, to be honest with you. Because whenever they're hiring IR people, they have to be able to communicate with you on a level that's equal, even though that it's sort of, how can I say, outside of an incident, you're not equal. Like, yes, that person is like skip levels above me, like they control my job, my life, whatever, whatever. But they are hiring you to be a leader under duress during an emergency situation. And while that executive might still be responsible at the end of the day for like the security organization, for example, you as an incident responder are a reflection of them. So you act with, you execute with that power during an incident. Sometimes you can flex it outside of an incident if, it's serious enough. But during an incident, typically roles and job levels, they don't matter anymore. Things kind of flip over on the head, and the incident commander or whatever is now in charge. Like, I've definitely been on calls before where I'm tasking executives with things to do. And they understand that. They understand that I was hired to be this person. And I make it very clear, and I've had to do this before in the past, like, I've had an executive come in and try to take over, and I very clearly tell them, like, hey, you want to take this over? All good with me. You do you. And I'll follow you, but understand you are going to be in charge. And you'll find that a lot of leaders don't, well, senior leaders don't want to do that. So really, you have to be very cognizant of the leaders, the senior leaders you work for, because they're going to be the ones who authorize your spending, depending on the company. Like, if you're at a company that's big enough and you're at a high enough level, like, you may have enough discretionary spending within a budget in case of an incident that you can kind of spend however you want. A lot of companies don't do that. It just kind of depends. But, that's another thing. As an incident responder, as part of the sort of the preparation phase, you can make that argument. You can say things to your organization like, hey, we need a discretionary budget in the case of an incident in case I need to go and buy a tool, or I need to hire a firm or something rapidly. Again, these are all things to think about. It's not always like technical stuff. You know what I mean? So be careful, be aware, and be cognizant, because if a company's senior leaders don't take IR seriously, you're not going to get the support that you need, and it's going to suck. Like, I'm testifying next month for a breach that I worked 2 or 3 years ago. And I mean, I don't remember anything, but I have to be there. I was summoned by the judge, and that situation was bad because I didn't have senior leaders who supported it, and now I have to like speak to those things. That's another reality of working in IR. Yeah. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, really appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm happy to always talk about stuff like that. I think honestly, like, managing expectations with senior leaders is kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. You can kind of dive into their heads a little bit and see how they think, and it's interesting. Denise, I think you had another question.
Yeah, so I was just gonna reference back the previous item that you'd mentioned, right? That ideally, you want to let us know about DFIR, but you also wanted to do it in a manner that provides the realities of the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say for the people who start looking and developing their skills, and maybe throughout that journey you realize, oh, I sort of don't like that blank skill, but I still like security. Is there a resource that has just a general overview and more details of the other roles that exist within InfoSec? I know SANS released like a chart and whatnot, where they have like the.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So in all of these, I'm going to list off some roles, but in all of these roles, they may support an incident, but that's not their core function, right? So like, I have a lot of friends who work in Intel, and as much as I. So I have this thing with my Intel friends where I'll talk shit to them and make fun of them because there's a running joke that all Intel analysts do is like work in Excel all day. But anyway, um, but no, I mean like they're doing research. They do a lot of research on threats. I don't know who's someone like off the top of my head. Chicago Cyber on Twitter. Look up his stuff. Um, Sharad. I'm sure some of you know Sharad. Like that's her thing. Like what they do is they focus in on like doing research and providing that data back to the company, back to leaders to make effective decisions. That's still security work. I mean, they're not. They typically work like a regular 9 to 5. They don't really do on call. I've never really met an Intel team that does on call. We might in incident response might like ask that we have a resource from threat intel like to be available in case we need those skills. But threat intel, reverse engineering, I don't know, threat detection, um, defensive engineering, like building SIMs or managing EDR or like deploying firewalls, things like that. Those are all still, that's all security work, um, and it doesn't necessarily require like all the stress that goes into some of this other work. I mean, penetration testers, honestly, a lot of the work that they do all day, every day is writing reports, you know? I mean, and I'm not saying there's no stress associated with some of these other career fields. It's just that it's a different level. Now, as far as a resource, I think some folks have posted something. I'll ping me and I'll see if I can find you something. But like, there are a lot of different jobs. So like, okay, in my friend group, to give you an idea, these are like my best friends. One is a GRC specialist. All she does is policy, regulation, and I don't know how she does it because I hate that work. I would lose my mind if I had to deal with regulators as often as she does, but she loves it. Whatever. Another friend of mine, he helps run a bug bounty program at a very large company. And he is a red teamer by heart and by trade, and that's all he does is break into stuff and find vulnerabilities and report them to the people to get those fixed. Another friend of mine, she's a product manager for an EDR, for a very big EDR tool, and basically sets the roadmap and designs everything that goes into that EDR. This is all still security work. It all impacts security. Another friend of mine does the same thing. She does the same thing for an incident response agent and has to be on her shit and has to know, how to do forensics, has to know how to like do malware analysis, system analysis. She doesn't do IR per se, but she's supporting the development of a tool that assists incident responders. And like me, there's me, the incident response person that everybody makes fun of. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of roles. Like, security is not the IR part is I guess the sexy part, the part that you hear about like on the news and stuff. And it's kind of funny because I feel like our work gets talked about the most, but yet, in my opinion, we're probably the most understaffed across the entire industry. But yeah, there's a lot of different roles and work and things to do. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think it does. Thank you so much. I know that I've talked to other people who are also trying to make the pivot, and sometimes, they'll look through something a little bit deeper, and they're like, well, maybe they get discouraged, right? But they forget to take in consideration that it's not just the FIR, right? There's other aspects that they can still work on instead of being discouraged from the field overall. It's just finding their niche within it more.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at security as an industry, you'll still find like all the traditional jobs that you'll find anywhere else: software developers, sales engineers, salespeople, account managers, architects and things like that. Like, we're just specialized, but not everything is tactical operations or things like that. You can still be involved in the security industry without, necessarily being, in the thick of it, I guess. But yeah, like I said, ping me and I will see if I can find something because I'm pretty sure I have like a resource somewhere that has like a list of all the different jobs and stuff you can do. I know the SANS one you're talking about, but there's another one.
Yeah, I think someone provided the ones from, I think it's CISA and the NICE framework as well. So thank you to whoever did that in the chat. I don't think that's your name, but thanks.
Yep. Let's see, Eileen. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Let me just read your message real quick. Are there entry-level DFIR roles? I've never seen one, to be honest with you. And to be honest, and the reason I say that is because digital forensics, in and of itself, you have to have a lot of knowledge and experience to do digital forensics, like in a operational, full-time, paid capacity. Now, I could give you a link and give you like hard drives and say figure out how to analyze these things, and you'll probably do it effectively, and that's amazing. It's not so much the technical skill; it's more of maturity. Again, it's a very impacting role, and everybody needs to pull their weight. So if you're interested in getting into DFIR, my path, again, like I showed a lot of you and some of you who have maybe weren't there when I showed it, is not typical. I did not have, the same path that a lot of people would have getting into this. But for what I would say is for if you're interested and you want to do the work, first off, ping me. We'll talk about it. We can talk about it over days, weeks, months, whatever. I've helped a lot of people get in, and it takes time. And I am here, as a tenured incident response person to help people get in. The second piece is I would recommend trying to find a job in a SOC. And as I mentioned earlier, in an MSSP, and as I said, probably going to suck, but it does expose you and does teaches you triage. It does connect you. It does expose you to like threat hunting and intelligence and IR. And being in a SOC, you're still going to learn and do like IR. It's just you're not going to be doing it maybe to the extent that a dedicated like DFIR person is, or like and that's okay. That's how I got there. Like that's how you kind of take those first steps. Because unless you come from the government, you got started with the military, DoD, like again, like I did, and what like a lot of other DFIR people did. It's not easy to get in with no experience or background. And I think, and I would love to be wrong about this, it's probably one of the only areas like going into a SOC and specializing into DFIR that you can take. But again, like I'm sure some other people have other opinions, and I would love to learn more about them. And no, I mean I agree. I hated the DoD. Like I loved what I learned. I loved the mission. I loved what I got to do. But the government having that much control into your life is not fun. So with that being said, I did also see some people say, they're interested in Intel. Intel's kind of the same way. Think about it like this. I don't know. Let's say you graduate from college, or you took a cert. I don't know. Why would I trust you to know anything about threat intelligence, or the threat intelligence sector, or anything about that? A lot of folks who get into CTI come from, the military or government in some way, shape, or form. Now, what I have noticed, though, is I've known a few people who have been able to get into threat intel, pivoting from fraud, internal audits, and SOC work. SOC, again, it's kind of like the same thing, whereas the SOC is sort of like, I don't know, this is going to sound really nerdy, but it's kind of like having an RPG character or something, or like kind of like going into the SOC is like the base level skills that a lot of people have and do, and then as you get more experience and you make networks and you build your network, you talk to people and you learn more, then you start specializing into different areas. And you can get into threat intelligence and DFIR that way. Government is probably one of the only places where you can just go in with a bachelor's degree and say, I don't know, or apply to the NSA and say, get one of those analyst jobs and start learning that way. But for companies and private organizations, again, another way to look at it is I'm hiring incident responders, people who are going to handle the most emergency and nastiest situations for my company. Why the hell am I going to hire someone who has no exposure or background? Like, the work in and of itself is extremely stressful. That is to say, however, that I would love to see some type of training program or academy or something that trains up like forensics folks, our threat intel folks, and then helps place them into organizations that need those roles. It's just something like that isn't, maybe in time. Also, another thing to keep in mind, all of this is still like really new. Because like even when I got started, security as an industry was like just military and DoD. Like maybe like some private companies had an information assurance person, but like this as an industry has probably only really been a thing since, I don't know, I feel like 2012, 2013 with some companies, of course, building security tools and whatnot, going back to like the late 90s and early 90s. But really didn't become more popular as a career probably until the last 10 or 15 years. So a lot of these things that, a lot of other career fields have where it's like, I want to work in digital forensics, or like, I don't know, I want to be a surgeon. Is there an entry-level surgeon job? You know what I mean? Like, they have entire programs and residencies and lots of training and education. Our industry just isn't like that yet. But honestly, I kind of hope it does one day. But with that being said, it also means that it's also kind of easier to get into highly technical or highly specialized work too. One of the recommendations I would make, if you're truly passionate about wanting to get into like a career field that might be a little bit harder, like threat intel or DFIR, networking, best way, honestly. Go to DEF CON, go to conferences, don't be afraid to reach out to people. Yeah. And I really would not worry about market saturation, like, at all. Like, the only area, my controversial opinion, that might have to worry about market saturation is probably like pen testing. Everybody wants to break stuff. Like, everybody wants to hack into things. It's not so much the same for like blue team aligned work. And think about it like this. This is what market saturation is. Every college in the United States alone, at the minimum, is probably graduating at least like 30 software engineers a year. That is not the same for security specialists at all, in any way, shape, or form. Like, there's just not enough of us at all for all of the roles we do. That's why, like, when you look at some of the skill sets I put on here, why I'm all over the place is because that's kind of what we have to do. We have to learn a little bit of everything. Because the reality is when you're working in the field, you might not have security specialists in any of these one areas, and you just gotta figure it out. Let's see.
So yeah, I was about to mention that the thing you mentioned about learning platforms to link to jobs actually are one of our main sponsors of Raices, World of Haiku, is working on World of Haiku Pro. That is a cyber range related to their game, and each cyber range adds to your profile skills. And with that, a game profile, you could call it like that, you can
Nice.
make your resume and link that resume to job postings in the same platform.
You know what? Are you talking about NCL by chance?
No, World of Haiku Pro. It's totally new.
So, okay, well, similar to that, then you just reminded me actually, and I really do appreciate it. I'm gonna put a link here. I competed a little bit, but I didn't have time. But okay, I see. So NCL, kind of similar, kind of like that. If you can get in, you get to compete in all sorts of various CTFs and stuff, and I think they help you build a resume and like they grade you on your skills and whatnot. You compete against other people, and I think they can feed your data to companies, like if you give them consent, um, for job hunting and things like that. Um, I'm only a part of it because SANS pushes it to the college students. Um, and my friend Melissa, Security Sphinx on Twitter, she loves the competition. I would love to do it more. I just don't have time. But yeah, it's like a CTF, except your CTF is like graded, and then your skills. It's kind of like Hack the Box in that way, I think, to where like it builds a profile for you that gets submitted to employers and whatnot. Um, but yeah, no, I didn't know about that. It's pretty cool. Let me see. Well, any other questions about anything? Please feel free. Like, I'm chilling. I don't got anything to do. Okay. Well,
It seems there are no further questions.
yep.
So thank you for everything for this amazing talk. It was pretty entertaining, even for me as a pen tester, see the realities of IR. So thank you again.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. So yeah, I mean, finding me is not hard, man. Like, message me on Discord. I'm really bad about checking my Discord notifications just because like I'm in way too many channels and I just can't keep up with it. But if you really want to get in touch with me, probably Twitter is the best way. Hold on. But I do check all my messages, and you know, if there's something you want to learn, something you want to do, if I don't know the answer, I probably have a friend who does. And if you're not interested in DFIR and you're interested in another area of security, still reach out. Like, again, I probably know someone, and a lot of the people that I do know love helping people, and they want to get more people into their career fields. Um, yeah. Well, I really did appreciate this and talking to all of you and the questions and whatnot. But yep, feel free to ping me either on Discord, Twitter, whatever. And feel free to look me up on LinkedIn too. I don't use that very often. I'll probably have to update it though soon. So that's also another option. Here, my LinkedIn. Cool. Well, with that being said, I think I'm gonna hop off now.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone
Yep.
for coming in. We had a lot of people coming in to this talk, and it was amazing. See
Yep.
you
Sure
all
thing.
next one.